Michael, so you're a first time caller, is that right?
I am. Yep.
And you're saying that you played a this is a big game that you played, right? Recently?
It was actually about, I don't know, probably a year and a half ago
Oh, okay.
when this hand actually happened,
Okay.
but pretty memorable.
What's the size of the game?
So it's a 100, 200, 200 game.
Do you want to say where you played it out of? We don't have to use anybody's names, but you can tell us where you played it out of.
Sure, it's Bobby's room. Yeah.
So Bobby's room at Bellagio?
Hmm.
So Bobby's room. Now, was this so it's no limit, right? Was it straight no limit?
No, it's no limit, correct?
So
Yep.
this must have, I assume, even if it's a year and a half ago, it's sort of an invite game, I would assume. Not open to the general public, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is an invite game. It's not hard to get the invitation. I mean, I was a 10, 20, 2040 no limit player there, and I don't know. So
Okay.
you start to get to know the other players in the game, and they'll.
So how big, like how deep were you in this hand?
So when the hand started, I had about 85,000 in front of me.
Wow. So you usually play 10-20, and then you got the chance to play in this game.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a big jump.
This is over my head. This is over my head. This wasn't my first time in the playing it, but I mean, it's the mix is pretty interesting. I mean, there's a few pros, some big name, type of thing, but during the daytime hours, there's a lot of tourists. I mean, it's a very curated game. Between when it starts at 10 a.m. to 5, 6 p.m.
Is this the game that JRB used to host, or
I don't know the entire history, but yeah, the guys that are running it now, I think they've been running for 3 or 4 years.
Okay. I don't know if JRB runs a game at Bellagio, or I know he works for MGM or for Aria. But okay, so 100, 200, two. The other thing, too, that I heard just as a politics of poker thing in Vegas, I don't know if it's changed from a year and a half ago, is that like now there are like, when I was at the series, these guys were saying that there's like 4 big private games that run outside of the casino in Vegas, almost like LA style. Like,
I've heard of those games too. I mean, Resort World, has a couple of, private games really, and I think most of the big casinos kind of do that.
Well, now that if you can just play at the casino, I mean, if you have the ability to curate a game and play it semi-private at a casino, I would, if I was a recreational player, I would 100%, I would much rather play in a casino than at like, some apartment at the Palms or something shit like that, right?
Sure. No, you feel a lot better. I mean, I've referred a couple of players, and they're like, because it's in a casino, they feel a lot better.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so 100, 200, 200, 85,000 effective this hand. Is that going to come into play?
It will.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's start us off here.
So I'm in the small blind, and wake up to 2 black aces.
All right, so heroes in the small blind with black aces again, and is this like a 9-handed, 8-handed?
9-handed.
Oh, yep. Wow. Okay, so here in the small blind with black aces, 9-handed. Okay.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So under the gun +2, is a pretty. He's a regular player in there. The way the game works actually is, like I said, when it starts at 10, it's the real pros aren't allowed to play, until later in the evening. So at this point, it's probably 9, 10 o'clock
in the morning.
No, PM.
Oh, PM.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been playing all day. I'd started with 20,000, lost that, rebought, type of thing,
Oh, wow.
and then kind of built up, there. But so I was close to leaving, as it was, but there's a bunch of big name, players, at the table at this time, and I'm a recreational amateur, and it's kind of fun to be able to mix it up with, with those guys, right?
Sure.
So anyway. So, but this guy, I mean, it's I don't know that you recognize him off TV or anything, but he's pretty regular in the game, and frankly, had been trying to make moves against me, for several hours, and I was able to pick off a bunch, and that's how I got to a lot of my stack, type of thing. I mean, it's for further texture in the game too. I mean, we do the stand-up game, once in a while, and then we also play 7 deuce, and the 7 deuce. I don't particularly enjoy it, especially on a game this big, but it brings a lot of.
How big is that? Do you remember how big the bounty is for that, the 7 deuce?
So it's 300 per player, and then 500 to the last player that folds, to the seven deuce.
So I get a couple things to say. First off, about seven deuce, and then what I would suggest your style be, because I actually knew a couple of guys. They were decent players. One guy was an eye doctor. People know Dr. Dennis from LA. And then there was a couple other guys too. But let me talk about seven deuce here first. I'm not a big fan of seven deuce bounty either. Seven deuce, of course, is when somebody wins a hand with seven deuce. Everybody owes a bounty. Sometimes the bounty's not large enough for the type of money that people are actually putting in to actually win that bounty. One of the very first live streams, actually, back, and it might be up on their YouTube, 2015, I want to say, a Poker Night in America. We did a live stream out of somebody's house before the casinos had a license to do cash games as a live stream. Elke, you know Elke, right? Like one of the tightest guys, like in a cash game, he blew off so much money trying to win seven deuce. It was amazing. It literally made him insane. And I was like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, the bounty's not that big to make it.
It really is an ego thing. I've seen, this, under the gun, two guy I'm talking about. I've seen him bluff 100 grand, with seven deuce just to show seven deuce, and
Yeah, I mean, and then just one other quick thing about strategy. So I've seen some pretty good like recreational players, older guys, like smart business guys, kind of implement this strategy, because you had just given this background to this +2 guy, right? Obviously a for-profit player. The thing that you can do sometimes with those guys, like if I was in your spot, is you actually kind of under rep your hand quite a bit. And I'm not even talking about slow playing. I'm actually talking about like almost going into check call mode quite a bit, because if you under rep your hand and you feign weakness, because they're professional players, they will try to take you for thin value with a lot of hands. And they'll also try to run bluffs against you too. So you get the both of best worlds sometimes. So I don't even know how this one's setting up. I mean, obviously you've got ace pre-flop, but I've seen guys like sometimes flop like bottom set against like a pre-flop pro, and then just kind of like check call, like massive bet on the river, like check call, the guy's bluffing. Or he had a hand where if the recreational guy breathed on the pot, the pro would have just folded. So I just thought that was interesting. All right, so what is +2 open here or what?
Yeah, so +2 opens for 500, pretty standard, there, 2.5, big blind, type of things. 500 is pretty standard raise, for the game. There's 3 callers,
Wow.
To that 500, there. And I mean, this is classic squeeze territory. This is classic, all of those kind of things, right? And so, I'm sitting there in this, small blind, there, and of course my goal is try to, isolate heads up.
Sure.
So I raised to 5,500.
So you went to 5,500. So +2 to 500, you get 3 people who call like in the field, right? Because they're going to have position because you're in the small blind, and you go to 5,500. To be honest with you, I mean, that maybe to some people on paper that seems a little bit large, but it's not. I mean, 4x plus the dead callers would be 3,500. How deep was +2, by the way? Do you remember?
He's going to cover it. He's one that is always going to have, the table mat.
Right. I mean, the thing is that you guys are you're in that territory where you're, I guess 400 big blinds deep. Yeah, you're 400 big blinds deep. So you're not so deep. There becomes situations in big bet poker where when you get infinitely deep, there's some value to keeping the pot small from out of position in a position dependent game. We don't really think about it that much and hold them, and you're nowhere near anywhere that deep. So I don't have that much of an issue with the play. You 3-bet to 5,500. And were some of the guys that flat call behind this +2 professional, were they like guys that might double flat? And what I mean by that is just like they might call you. Like there's a possibility that you 3-bet, the initial guy folds and one of these other guys calls.
Yeah, I mean, so 2 of the 3 you would know who they are. I mean, it's they've got deep tournament runs and including main events, type of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean they're better players than I am.
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's there. So anyway, but yeah, I tend to overbet my aces because I just hate getting aces cracked. I don't know how to play them, post flop very well. type of thing. I mean, all my friends love to make fun of me because I love 4-6, 3-5, connected, type of
But you
thing.
might get into a situation where when do you have release, right? Your aces, so you're trying to kind
Yeah,
of thin the
I
field
I
out.
just yeah, I mean
You're not
it's
the you're not the first or the last guy that feels like the
sure,
way. So you three bet
sure.
to 5,500, and then what happens?
Yeah, and then big blind calls. Okay.
Okay.
And big blind is a pretty tight player. I mean, it's he's a regular, there too. I mean, he's not one of the hosts, but he's a friend of the host and is but fairly tight player.
Uh huh.
But he also had chipped up and and barely had me covered. He probably was like 88, 90 type of thing.
Uh huh.
But he makes the call. And then the initial raiser calls, and then everybody else folds.
All right. So the big blind cold calls and +2 calls. So 5,500, 5,500. That's 11, 16, 5. The pot is probably 18 to 19,000, maybe like 18,500 ish, something like that. The interesting chat, and for the live chat here, Mike, it's interesting because I know you had just said, well, people say like I play aces too strong. You could do another thing here too, where you actually make kind of like a bullshit 3-bet sizing, like where you go to like 3x, like 1,500. And what you're trying to do, you're trying to get the guy from +2 to 4-bet you to induce. That's
Yeah.
another way to think it. Because I got to tell you, like if you made it 1,500 here instead of going 5,500, just with that plan, kind of like a
Yeah.
ridiculously small, somebody would 4-bet you, whether it was the big blind or if the big blind cold called you, the other guy definitely would have 4-bet you. I have a feeling that the +2 guy, if he's solid, just realizes, okay, you've got a big hand here. There's no point in 4-betting to try to get like the overlay from the big blind guy when this is a good 4-bet spot for him, because he just might think you have a strong hand. It would just be burning money. But anyways, all right.
In hindsight, that would have been an excellent play because I think 100% somebody would have tried to effectively make a squeeze, right? I mean, it's
right.
all
right. So 3 ways, 18,500. Okay.
yeah. So then the flop comes out 4 of spades, 8 of clubs, 9 of spades.
So 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 of spades, 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 of spades here with black aces. Black ace. I think this might be the third time we've had black 3 for 3 here today. Do we have black ace? Oh no, the first guy had kings. All right, so 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 of spades, and you've got the big blind in there, and then you've got the +2 guy in there as well. The pot is already 18,500. It's not necessarily the absolute best flop for you, just because I can see somebody having 9s, 8s. I mean, at this point, I don't know if the guy opens pocket 4s, but I could see sometimes having some of these hands. You actually have the best combo of overpair here to check. I'm not saying that I would check. Here's the thing. Like, if you think that somebody's making a play, it really kind of depends on, I think guys like you sometimes think that the pros are maybe pushing you around a little bit more than they might be. And if you follow what I'm saying here is that I already talked about how it's a really good spot for the +2 guy to 4-bet, but I think that he realizes you have a big hand. So if you were to actually get heat on this board, like say you came out swinging with like a gigantic bet or some ridiculously large bet, if these guys are any types of for-profit players and they put pressure on you, there's a really good chance you're beaten. Because if I put myself in those guys' spots and I just call the 4-bet from you, and you like to play like these big hands like large for 3-bets, if I raise this flop, I'm going to have better than aces. I'm going to have better, especially when you hold the ace of spades here, blocking some of my now. Yes, the guy could have some combo draws like Jack 10 of spades, something like that, Queen Jack of spades, Queen 10 of spades. The only reason why I bring this up is that I don't know what's going to happen here post flop. It sounds to me like you could set this up sometimes with a check because probably you don't play it that way that often. And it gives these guys like the opportunity to possibly bet something else that's lesser for value or to bluff. Because if you just come out and bet like 15,000 here, I mean, maybe like these guys will like one time you with like 10s or jacks if they think that you might do that with like ace king, but you might not get the action that you're looking for. I mean, those are my thoughts.
So So to be honest with you, at this point, I'm invested in the game. I think 50 actually, right? And so I am trying to kind of defend my profit a bit.
Uh-huh.
There, but at the same time, what's the point of playing this game if you're just
Sure.
going to roll over?
Sure, sure.
So, there. So, I mean, I thought about, check raise, right? I mean, I think that's a pretty standard amateur play, type of.
I don't know if I would check raise here. The problem with check raising is that, I mean, that would be amazing if you had the type of like image where you were maniacal and you had ever shown down like a situation where you had check raise bluffed in a spot like this, you could probably pull it off. But
I want them to know that I've got a monster at this hand. I'm happy to just scoop the 18, right?
well, I mean, that's not how I would think about it. It's
Well,
like it's on a tournament. It's a cash game.
yeah,
Yeah.
but again, I mean, it's 30 grand profits, 30 grand
I
profit,
get it.
right?
I get it. I get it. So you're saying that you want to shut the hand down.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to right now. Right? Just take down, what's there, especially with multiplayer.
The problem, even if you were, so my only thought about that though is that even if you want to take that approach, the problem with check raising a good player here is that I think you're just going to get things to continue that have you beaten
Well,
or that have massive amount of equity versus you.
yeah, and again, I get it, but that's a thought. But the other thought is if I bet and somebody raises me, then I can fold. Actually, I mean, it's the worst case scenario for me is my thought on here is if they just call, because then I still feel like I'm in a blunder. Not really. I don't think any of them's got kings or queens. Because I think they would have rebet on the pre-flop, right?
By the way, I want to defend Michael here because some people in the chat are like, "Well, he shouldn't be playing this game." Michael just gave the backstory, right? Like he bought in for 20, he's up to 85, he's towards the end of his session. Nobody can tell me in the live chat that they've never had this feeling before when they either were stepping up, right, like taking a shot. I mean, we're all human, right? We're not robots. So I've been in situations earlier on in my career, maybe not so much now, where I've had feelings like this. The only time I would ever have a feeling like this would be if I was on my last bullet at Hustler Casino Live and I couldn't go back in my pocket. But anyways, so it's 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 spades.
Yeah, I'm not trying to follow the comments because I can't multitask.
No worries. Yeah.
But I've played that game a dozen times now,
Okay.
and I'm more comfortable in it now.
Sure.
But at that time, that was probably my second or third time playing it. There.
So what did you decide to do on the flop here?
Okay, so I bet 10,000 on the flop.
Okay, so hero bets 10,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then big blind calls and then under the gun
+2.
call.
They both the +2 folds or calls.
No, they both call.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you bet 10,000 and they both call. So now the pot is 48,500. I'm just actually going to play devil's advocate with you here, Michael. And I have absolutely no problem with your sizing because your sizing, I think, is more consistent the way that I would want to sort of extract value from the hand. But with what you told me you wanted to accomplish, which was to sort of shut everything down, I would have figured you would have just come out and potted the flop and let the guys know, hey, I've got a big hand, and then get them to both fold. Here, you're actually having them stick around, which in itself is not bad because we want to get value in a cash game. But for what you had just told me what you wanted to do, I'm surprised that you didn't just blast it.
Well, okay, so in my mind, is these guys 10,000, 18,000 would have really have made a difference.
I think that you probably have more hands here at 10,000 than that might not necessarily be overpairs, like ace king. I mean, I don't know about necessarily your c betting range in this spot, as opposed to like if you came out and like plowed for like 20,000. You're not supposed to really come out and plow for 20,000 and get everything weaker to fold and only better to continue on. But if the goal was to shut the hand down, I could kind of see betting larger, But anyways.
Well, but at the same time, I mean, that's my desire. I don't know if to say that's my goal is accurate. That's my desire.
Okay.
I would have been happy to, but I'm not. Anyway, so
yeah.
So call. There.
So 48,500 to the turn. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the turn comes a 6 of diamonds.
All right. So 6 of diamonds on the turn. So it's 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 of spades. Turn is the 6 of diamonds here. And the big blind cold called. The +2 guy opened and then overcalled, defended to the 3-bet. And it went bet, call, call. And you have the aces with the ace of spades, which is kind of interesting because with the exception of like king, jack, and king, queen of spades, like Broadway flush draws are combo draws. Everything is a combo draw now on this board on 9-8-4-6 with the sole exception of like king, queen, and king, jack of spades. Everything else is some sort of combo draw because the 10 of spades in the hand is at least a gut shot, a 5. So it's kind of interesting. If someone's got spades here, they can't have nut spades, right? Because you got the ace of spades.
Right.
It is a big combo draw. So it went bet and call. And wow, yeah. I got to be honest with you. Yeah, I might. So what is 48,500? You put in 10 and you put in 55. So you've got 70,000 left in your stack ish. So you've got about a pot and a half. This is actually really, it's really awkward. I mean, we can cut the stakes by like divide by 100, right? And then we started with $850. And now the pot's like $485 for people who are like, oh, these stakes are too big. Like, what would you do in the spot if the pot was $485 and we had $700 left and we get this turn? It's an interesting spot because, I mean, you could certainly get called by, definitely continue to get called by worse here. Do we want to play for stacks on this turn card? Does this turn card really change anything?
I'm not worried about the turn card at all.
It just gives flush draws more equity. Then I mean I would continue to bet then. Unless you were just concerned about the fact that 2 people called you and you thought you might be beaten just on the flop, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about the 6 of diamonds beating me at all. I am concerned it might bring in more combo draws, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's
sure.
Type of thing, so I just check it.
I think I think that was my gut reaction, Michael, too, to check, but I think it's actually really close. I 100% agree with you that the 6 of diamonds doesn't change anything. It's just a combination of, is it possible when it goes call on the flop that you might be beaten, but your stack size is so awkward. I see some people saying jam. I see some people saying like bet 25,000. If Michael bets like 25,000 here, starting with 70, I would think he's definitely commit. I mean, unless it goes like jam, like if he bets half the size of the pot and then a guy jams for 70 total, it's like 145, 50 for him to call. Yeah, it's like jam, bet small, check. So you decide to check. Okay.
I check.
Yeah.
Big blind checks.
Okay.
+2 bets 30,000.
Well, you have a decision to make now. And the thing that I would say here is that you started with 70, right? You started the turn with.
Started the turn.
Yeah, you started the turn with 70. So, and then you've got this guy behind you in the big blind who checked, right? On the turn, which is like, I don't think he's slow playing there on the turn. So this is either an all in or a fold. I mean, there's no calling here, especially with the guy behind you, because I think that would be a disaster if he had some sort of equity. Because, I mean, if you call, the pot's like 108 and you'd only have like 40,000 left because you're starting the turn with 70. So you're already at that like threshold here, especially multi-way. And again, I'm going to dismiss the big blind. I'm going to dismiss the big blind checking, him ever having a strong hand. I mean, I know it's multi-way, but I kind of want to shut that guy out just a little bit more because you calling is just going to be just as strong. So it's an all-in or jam, and it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Yeah, some people are saying you've got a bad feeling because here's the thing that I would say, Michael. If I put myself in your opponent's spot here, I don't know what I'm betting here from that +2 perspective. That's like, I guess maybe if I had like jacks or queens, I could be making a little bit of a protection bet. If I was +2 and I had jacks or queens and you check the turn, maybe I would be making a little bit of a protection bet here.
So queens, I don't think he would have just flatted, my
Preflop?
4-bet, pre-flop, right? I mean, it's Tens and jacks maybe, but kings or queens, I really don't think is in play. Do you?
Well, if he thinks that you're super, super strong, I mean, he's more incentivized to 4-bet, right? Because that guy called in between. We talked about that, right? But, I've certainly flatted queens before when I think a guy's like, oh, okay, this guy's got like aces, kings a lot here, maybe some ace king. I'm just going to play it post. That's how I would see
I
myself.
Again, I think my image is not a nitty image. I mean,
Okay.
it's there. I mean,
Fair enough.
certainly isn't today. I mean, it's there, but
Now, there's a lot of people in the chat saying that they could see they could see possibly folding. I think it's really close. Again, I think that calling is out of the question here. And I do feel like a lot of people, when they play big pots, and I know this is like a big pot, but again, even if it's for your stakes, divide by 1,000, divide by 100, they get a little bit lost in a spot like this. And I've done it before too with pot size, but it's pretty important to just keep track of how much you have and how much would be in the pot if you called and how much you have back. And I feel strongly here at about, if you call, the pot's like 108, 500 and you've got 40 back, this should be a jam or this should be a fold, especially I think with a guy behind you. So I don't think anybody can really, I mean, it would be a big fold here, Michael, if you made a fold. And I don't think anyone is ever going to say that this is a mistake if you decided to check jam. I do kind of have a little bit of a, I don't know if you call it a bad feeling or what. I just don't know what +2 here. And the other issue here for +2 is like, +2 is like, if he bets 30K with like queens here, is he going to call the 40K more? I suppose he must have to, right? Is he going to bet fold at like 150 for 40 on the turn? It's kind of crazy. Well, everybody wants to know what you did, Michael.
well, so I'm a little embarrassed to tell her.
Uh,
I just called. I
okay.
mean,
Okay.
and my logic here was that I really thought big blind was chasing something, and the only thing that he could potentially have is a flush draw, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's the only thing that there. Now, to be honest with you, I thought if I shoved, he's calling with the flush draw no matter what, type of thing. Especially if you got 10 jack, big combo draw, right? Type of thing. I mean, it's so I really didn't think it mattered what I did.
Well, I guess my case was that with that third guy in there, don't you want to not give him the equity though to call?
Well, but and you can do the math here. But at the time, I didn't think he had equity to fold if he had like 10 jack.
Well, he certainly doesn't have equity to fold if he has jack 10 of spades. That's for sure.
Well,
But
no, that's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
even if I go all in, I think he's still calling. I didn't feel like my raise or call was going to change his action to call.
Well, what if he has king jack of spades or king queen of spades though? Now, those are naked flush draw. I mean, he doesn't know that they're necessarily naked, but that should drive him out of the pot though. If the guy bets 30 and you jam for 70, so then the pot would be 148, 70 for him to call. He probably shouldn't call getting 2-1 with one card to come.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's I didn't do a good job of calculating that in my head, but my impression at the time was if he's got a big combo draw, he's coming in with it no matter what, I mean, type of thing. I mean, but I understand where that's flawed thinking. He only had 15,000 invested at the moment, right? Type of thing. So he could have folded.
Okay. So you call, and then what did the big blind do? Did he call it?
He calls as well. Correct.
Wow. All right. So you call and the big blind call. And again, like I said, I obviously gave my reasons why that would be my obviously my third choice, but it looks like the pot right now, you just put 90 in on the turn. So it's 138,500 and you have like 40,000 left, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let's get to the river.
Yep. So the rainbow, the river was an 8 of spades.
8 of spades, so it brought in the front door? Brought in the front door flush, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, now you just check and somehow pray that it gets checked down. I think.
So guys, this is where it gets interesting here. Okay. I mean, it's I check. Okay. I mean, it's big blind checks.
Okay,
right?
So check. Yep.
Yeah. +2 jams all in.
Jams all in for
Well, he has
40,000,
both of
right?
us covered,
Right.
so it doesn't
48,000
matter.
effective. By the way, the guy behind you has about the same amount as you, or
A
what?
little bit more, a few thousand more than me.
All right, so 40 to 45,000. So 40K
And
effective versus the hero, and we'll call it like maybe 50K effective versus the
and
big
there's a
blind.
reason why I know this.
Okay.
You know that.
So plus 2 GMs all in for 40,000. And
Yeah.
what are you thinking? It's weird because you've got the ace of spades here in your hand?
Yeah, I mean, it's, so I tank it here. I mean, again, again, with the history, I know that he's got moves, type of thing. I mean, it's, all of that, there. I still think he could just have tens, jacks, tens or jacks, type of thing. I think he could have ace nine, suited, type of thing, right? I mean,
But would he bet the river? You mean turning those hands into a bluff at the end? You mean trying to bluff those?
well, I mean, so I would have expected if anything, but a paired board flush, type of thing. It's what would he have jammed with that? There, probably still, he would have jammed, there. But I think he just calls the turn if he had a big flush draw.
You mean checks back the turn, you mean? Just checks back
Check
the
backs the turn,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
I mean, that's the interesting thing about this whole hand is like, what is he betting here on the turn? I mean, here's the thing. So what is he betting? That beats your right for value, right?
That's what I'm trying to think. There.
So
I mean,
it'd
it's
be,
did he call with an eight? I mean, or did he bluff? Did he bluff bet the turn with an eight? I mean, that's a possibility.
I mean, here
right?
that's actually going very, very deep. Let's look at the class of hands here. So obviously, it would be slow played boats, which would be consists of sets on the flop, right? That didn't raise the flop. Okay, so say he slow plays some sets. I got to tell you, if I'm that guy, I do a lot of raising on the flop for the reasons I talked about at the beginning of
Sure.
the call. But let's say he slow plays some. Okay, so that's believable. Now he bets the turn, and obviously now he bets the river. That's the only play. All right, so you got slow played sets. Now that the 8 comes, there's only one set of 8s, which is now quad. Set of 9s does even have 4-4 here. If he had a combo draw, like a gigantic combo draw, like Jack 10 of spades, and he was just like, all right, well, my hand is just so big here on the turn. I'm actually not going to check it through. I'm going to bet to get maybe Michael off of like ace king and just win my hand. I mean, I know I'm going to bet call. Like if Michael check jams, okay, big deal, but I'll get him to fold out and it will be more believable if I somehow get a call on the turn from the big blind that I could jam the river as a bluff. Well, if he arrives here with the spade draw that he bet off on the turn, at just 40 to 50,000 effective and it gets checked to me with a popping 138, I think I'm betting here too with the jack high flush. The other interesting thing, although it's probably closer than it looks against two people, but the other interesting thing you talk about is a hand like 7-8. I saw somebody in the comments say like 7-8 would be an interesting
7-8.
bluff
Yeah.
card on the turn.
Yeah.
Would 7-8 start betting the turn as a bluff? So 7-8 is a bluff on the turn with equity. And again, it actually has enough equity probably to call off against one pair with one card to come, but does it start a bluff and then it was going to bluff at the end? Now, if 7-8 ran into it though, if I was thinking about possibly thinking that Jack 10 of spades was a close bet on the river, 7-8, obviously it's a slam dunk bet if it's heads up. It's just weird that this guy is in the middle here in the big blind. So if Jack 10 of spades is close to a value bet, then 7-8 is even closer to a non-bet. So we talk about those types of hands. I'm just saying that like he probably can comfortably bet a flush here, I would say with these stack sizes, but it's interesting. And then it would seem to be a suicidal bluff into two people. That's what I would always go back to is like, this guy is bluffing two people. You only have 40 left. The other guy's only got 50 left. How is it going to get through? Both guys,
So, well, I mean, 40 grand and 50 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, right? I mean, it's,
Yeah.
So now,
Oh, and the 7 deuce game is on too, right? The 7 deuce game?
game is on.
Oh, God. The 7 deuce game. This is why I don't like the 7 deuce. The reason why I don't like the 7 deuce game is because it adds a bluffing frequency. A lot of times from players that never bluff, because like the easiest players they'll play like in the world are players that never bluff, right? They're just super straightforward. When you add the 7 deuce game, now all of a sudden a guy who literally never bluffs now has a bluffing frequency. And now I totally forgot about that, Michael. Now it's actually much closer to a call. If you didn't have the 7-deuce game in here, and plus on the turn too, for the same reasons that I said that 7-8 starts a bluff on the turn, you could make the same case for 7-deuce, although I guess that's a pretty big flop overcall. I guess maybe 7-deuce suited with the backdoor on 9-8-4. He turns the backdoor.
If he had 7-deuce, he 100% would have called 5,500 pre-flop. 100%.
And then I'm saying on the flop though too, like say he has 7-deuce suited and he's got that like 3 to a straight and a backdoor flush, right?
Bart, I can tell you stories where on that fucking. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on there.
Yeah.
On that 7-deuce game, where literally I went all in, for 25,000 into like a $6,000 pot, and I got called with a guy with 7-deuce, had to go runner, and he hit it, type of thing. The 7-deuce game I hated. So, but here's the other part, of this, and so it's probably going to tell you what my decision was. Sure. I told you on the flop, that I'm, looking to just defend my profit and take it down right then. Well, and I understand that this is a leak, there, but now I'm thinking, shit, I got 45 grand invested in this thing. It's, I'm going to battle for that thing now. Right.
It's 40,000 for you to call for 168. You're getting 4 to 1. You only have to be right 1 out of 5 times. The only concerning thing is you got this other guy behind you.
Right. Well, and so my thought is that, given his passivity, right? He's never shown aggression at all, right? It's, my assumption is that he's just going to fold once,
big blind.
Based big blind. Yes, he'll fold just based on my action. Maybe he calls a heads up if he's got, jacks or queens or whatever, type of thing. But based on his passivity, I don't put him on anything big.
By the way, before you tell us what you do here, again, I see this. If you go back to the beginning of what I was talking about, the beginning of the call, I had no idea how this was going to play out. You said the 7-deuce bounty was 300 ahead, right? 300 per?
Yep. 300 plus 500 for the last folder. Yeah.
Let's say that this guy does have 7-deuce. He just has tried to, let's say he's bluffing with 7-deuce. He's just trying to dust off 80,000 to win like $3,000 in bounties.
I've seen it.
But I've seen it. Yes. I saw, like I said, I saw on the live stream. It's the craziest thing you'd ever seen. So anyways, what did you end up doing, Michael?
So I call and I don't tank long. It's, there's a couple of others, they're on the other end of the table. I was in 9 seats, so I show my hand, to
the big blind folds. Does a big blind fold?
No, well, hold on a second. So I show my aces to my end.
Oh, okay.
And then I don't tank long, but I call. There. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, big blind goes into the tank for, I'm not exaggerating, 20 minutes. It's this is a big game. So any other situation we would have called the clock. Mm-hmm. No one, everyone's pros there and. He literally tanks for 20 minutes, and he finally makes the call.
Oh, wow. Well, I don't like that. I thought that for a second this was leading up to like the big blind folding some like the big blind has like 7-8 suited, and he folded once you called, but I don't like he overcalls. This is I don't know, Michael, how you're going to win this hand against 2 people here. It's very hard. Yeah.
I hate that. Let me ask you on etiquette, when we talked about it before, would it have been appropriate for me to say something to try to induce him to fold? Because at this point, I know that he's got the better hand if he's, tanking, there. I think he's got a flush.
I don't think that, well, here's the thing. There's all different rules in different casinos with cash games. I think in a private game like this, the rules are even looser. If your action is already completed, so if you're asking me from an etiquette standpoint, if this guy bet and you called and action is completed and it's on the big blind and you're trying to do some speech play with the big blind, I don't think that's bad etiquette. You've already completed your action. Why would it be bad? Why would it be bad etiquette?
I think I could have induced it. Well, because it affects the +2, right? It's maybe plus 2 is a stone cold nuts, right? It's,
but you could be saying something. Let's say you were heads up against +2 and it was his decision and you started making fun of his mother or something like that. That can influence his decision too.
Okay.
Anyways, so what happened?
Okay, big blind won with
Okay,
pocket fours.
pocket fours. And what did the other guy have?
This is so gross. He had ace four of diamonds.
Oh, ace four of diamonds.
Yep.
Ace four of diamonds. So he just started. He just started a block. So he overcalled the flop. Wow, that's not a 10,000 in a call. Like I got to tell you, like on nine of just being very very subtle. Nine of spades, eight of clubs, four of spades. You bet 10,000. The big blind calls. That's a very bad call. Overcall
But
the flop.
again, in defense of him,
Oh.
first of all, he's been made moves against me all day. Big blind is a pretty tight, player. And again, my bet smells like seven deuce a lot, as well. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, but I'm again from a spot like he doesn't even have a backdoor. Like whenever you make when
it's a stone bluff, 100%.
I'm just talking about overcalling the flop. Like him, like if I was him, I would have got out on the flop. So that's why
In that game, a size suited is pretty common for.
Oh, I have no problem pre-flop. I'm talking about on the flop. When you bet 10,000 and it goes call, and he's got an ace four of diamonds on nine of spades, eight of clubs, four of spades. That's a very optimistic call.
Well, listen, I think he puts me on ace king, ace queen, seven deuce,
Yeah.
Type of thing. It's and then especially when I go passive mode,
Yeah.
on turn and river, right?
Michael, I appreciate you. It was a fun one. Thank you very much for calling in and really appreciate it.